Good morning. Well, who am I? That's a photograph of me a good few years ago, a bit grey around the edges now. My claim to fame is since I last did a talk at the PCI Council, I've since given a TED Talk, but it's the world's only TED Talk that's been R-rated. Now, don't worry, this talk is suitable for work, so we're all safe. And I'd like to talk today a little bit about updating some of the interesting vulnerabilities we've found in smart devices over the last few years. And I want to start by going right back to the beginning. I look like a ventriloquist now, don't I? You might remember this little lady. Do you remember her? My friend Kayla? The world's first interactive talking dolly. Great idea. The idea was that a child could speak to the dolly. Dolly could listen. It could then look up what the child was asking and then respond. Great idea. Could have a conversation with kids. Had a microphone, a speaker in here, and Bluetooth. And the way she worked is you would connect the dolly to your smartphone. And the smartphone would do all the heavy lifting. But unfortunately, there were problems. The Bluetooth connection wasn't very secure. Now, if you wanted to have some fun, you could genuinely connect this to your smartphone. Remember, microphone, speaker, Bluetooth? She's actually a Bluetooth headset inside of Dolly's body. So you could really genuinely have phone calls on the dolly if you wanted. You got some very odd looks, particularly when you're driving as well. But anyway, that Bluetooth thing was the problem. We discovered that she was always in a parable mode. So when she was sat in your kid's bedroom, anyone within Bluetooth range, so 20, 30, 40 yards, so street outside, next door apartment, next door neighbor, could connect to the Bluetooth microphone and listen to your kids. So she's a creepy spying bug. So much so, she actually got banned in Germany. It became illegal to own this dolly in Germany, which was quite awkward because I had to give a talk in Munich. But anyway, that's another story. The crazy part, though, is not only could she answer questions, we also found ways to compromise the database of question and answers in there. We extracted it, modified it, changed it, put it back in, and now we make her swear like a docker. Made me chuckle anyway. So that's my friend Kayla. And are things getting better? That was a long time ago. You might remember I gave this talk in 2015, years ago. And surely we wouldn't see the same mistake made again, but this is crazy. This was Christmas before last. Do you remember these? Did you have one of these? And the little Fisher-Price telephone that you pull? I had one. It was made of wood. But now they've made of plastic. And Fisher-Price, Mattel, have now made this smart. So this is a Bluetooth smart-enabled chatterbox telephone. And the idea being is you can pair it to your cell phone, and you can actually make cell phone calls on the telephone. I love it. We have the rotary dial, right? How cool is that? But unfortunately, Fisher-Price made exactly the same Bluetooth pairing mistake as my friend Kayla 8 years earlier. That's crazy. Have we learned? It seems perhaps not in some cases, which I think is a real shame. But the sort of fails we're seeing are now starting to evolve a bit. 10 years ago, we've started to see lots of API fails. A good example of this is a little CCTV camera you could stick up in your home. It had audio. You could connect to it using your smartphone and see what's going on at home. Great. So your home was safe. But unfortunately, there was an API authorization flaw. Now, an authorization flaw is when the mobile app doesn't check that it's me making the request. So anyone can make the request, and we discovered we could get the footage from anyone's home, which isn't great. We also found authorization flaws in this little device. This is a little awesome fingerprint padlock. Now, I don't know about you, I leave my keys every which where. So having a fingerprint for a padlock is a great idea, except that it had an API authorization flaw, and from anywhere in the world, we could unlock this padlock. Even worse, you could also unlock it by tapping with your cell phone. It used Bluetooth. So we reverse engineered it, worked out what was the key that it was using. And what it did is it took the Bluetooth MAC address and reversed it, and that was the key. Of course, the Bluetooth MAC is the one thing you can get over radio waves from this lock. So all sorts of crazy fails. You might remember LoJack. Do you remember the car security device that means you get your car back if it's stolen? Well, their mobile app had a security flaw as well, which meant you could actually send the car somewhere else or send the cops different directions or turn off the alerts. But the good thing about API flaws is they're really easy and quick to fix. So all of these bugs were fixed very quickly by making a couple of changes to lines of code. And where we're starting to get stuck now is we're seeing vulnerability is more prevalent in the local device, in the hardware of the system. Good example of that might be a smart lock, which looks great, but unfortunately the shell of that lock was made of really soft metal, so we could drill it in less than 4 seconds, put in a screwdriver, and unlock your door. That's going to be really hard to fix, isn't it? You've got to do a full product recall to reassure people about the security of that. Another crazy one. Don't worry, I don't straighten my hair with hair straighteners very often, but we found some smart, connected hair straighteners, and with a Bluetooth problem, from the street outside, we could turn your hair straighteners on, and if you'd left them on your floor, on your carpet, on your bed, you're going to catch things on fire. And again, you can't fix that by changing some code remotely. A kid's toy tank with CCTV, with security problems you couldn't fix remotely, so you could spy on people from their kids' toys. And that was really unpleasant. But then things started to take a slightly darker turn. Now, we talk about ransomware a lot, don't we? But ransomware on embedded devices is really unusual. And a few years ago for DEF CON, we presented a paper where we did the world's first proof of concept ransomware on an embedded device. And we thought we'd have a go looking at a thermostat. So we pulled the firmware from the thermostat, started unpacking it, realized there were vulnerabilities, and realized we could pop ransomware onto your home heating system so you get cold in the winter. But really, does it matter? You just rip it off the wall and get a new one, right? But it got worse. Once we pulled apart the firmware, we found a bunch of other bugs. The code was so poorly written. For example, when it failed to make an SSL connection properly, the developer called it the SSL shit status. Wow. And then you could also load your family photographs onto it. So it had like a wallpaper that wiped between your various family photographs. And the routine that dealt with the wiping of the photographs was called the son of a bitch mode. You can still buy this product. That blows my mind. What hope have we got of quality if we're seeing code like this being released? We're also starting to see more recently, we're starting to see barriers to entry in certain markets. So one of the very first was the UK, so they developed the Product Security Telecommunications Infrastructure Bill, we say PSTI, and they had some very basic, but I think good principles. So you cannot have a default or a blank password on a smart device. Good, because that's a source of so many problems. If you're going to sell a product, you have to make a statement to your consumers about how long you're going to support it for. So many products in smart device land just stop being supported, and they go dead and become dumb devices, and we end up frustrated as consumers. So they said, right, well, if you're going to support it for 3 years, you say that and you stick to it. And you must also have a vulnerability disclosure program. So if researchers, like us or others, find security bugs, you tell people how you're going to listen and how you're going to fix. There's also some changes made over here. So the Federal Cybersecurity Improvement Act that covers IoT also means that federal agencies cannot buy products that doesn't comply with certain basic security standards. So good. The real problem I think lots of organizations had early on was they didn't know what standards to comply with. This standard, that standard. There were so many competing standards, and that's really frustrating when you're a vendor trying to build a smart product. But the good news is we're starting to see convergence of standards. So in Europe, you're seeing ETSI EN 303645, which is a great standard, really easy to follow, tells you how to do cybersecurity well. In the US, you've got NIST labeling, which is based on 8259. Follow that too. They're good standards. They don't particularly conflict. They support each other. So it makes compliance much, much easier now. So often vendors will say, what do I comply with? Here you go. We can comply. But what am I worried about now? Back in the day, it was consumer devices. But for environmental reasons, so many of us are putting up solar panels. So many of us are thinking about storage batteries. We're thinking about electric vehicles to try and reduce carbon dioxide emissions. But unfortunately, a lot of those new technologies come with associated cybersecurity problems. Now, one of the early devices we looked at, this was an EV charger. We did a project. We looked at lots of different connected smart EV chargers. In fact, it was all broadcast on the Wall Street Journal, so you can go and find that online. And we found all sorts of connected EV chargers that had security flaws that meant you could turn them off remotely. So you wake up in the morning to drive to work, you've got no battery charge. Ah, damn. But it's not just about your charger. It's about the aggregation of chargers. There are millions of these out there. And if hackers could turn them all on, all off, all on, you start to create grid spikes. You start to destabilize the grid. So that was EV chargers we did a little while back. We then moved on to start looking at the inverters that look after your solar panels. So your solar panels might spit out a random voltage depending on how much sunlight's coming. And they need to turn that into 110 volts, into mains current. So you need an inverter. These are all connected because everyone wants to see how much solar power you're generating, right? I've got solar panels. I look at my cell phone every day, look at my app, go, hey, this is great. I've got loads of power. I'm saving loads of money. But they're smart. And we found very similar issues with the EV chargers as we did with the solar inverters. So on a sunny day, you could remotely turn off everyone's solar panels. You could turn them on again, and you start to see problems happening on the power grids. Our power grids can cope with things going off. They can cope with things going on. They can't cope with continuous flip-flopping, and you'll start to see blackouts in time. Which led me to shouting at my TV. Do you ever have those moments? You shout at your TV? I don't know. There's quite a lot of hacking in various movies, and one I love, a really good movie, Leave the World Behind. It's on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, Julia Roberts is in it. It's a really, really good show. But I was shouting at my TV because they were presenting concepts of hacking that just don't stack up. We do a lot of cybersecurity research in shipping and airplanes, and you'll probably see the trailer to the movie. There's a ship that crashes into the shore, and in the movie itself, a cop says, yo, it's a navigation problem. So, what? No. It was a clear day. The ship's crew would go, we're going to hit the land. Should we turn the engine off? Or turn? I don't know. Same thing with planes. 2 airplanes crashed in exactly the same position. It's just not how it works. When we're flying, I'm a pilot, we have pilots in control. You cannot affect navigation systems to the point where you would cause 2 planes to crash in the same position. Flying is safe. The Tesla scene, where Tesla started crashing, I'd say that's on the bounds of plausibility. It involves some serious nation-state grade hacking against a very large automotive organization that have got good security controls. But there's a bit of me going, yeah, if the stars aligned. But the power outage piece they talk about, that to my mind is plausible. The most recent piece of research we've been doing is looking at smart home batteries. So the idea is that you store electricity from your solar panels, or you store it when it's cheap overnight. So when no one's using it, you buy it cheaply, and you release it to your home during the day when power is expensive. And there's a great opportunity here for us to balance the power grid, to reduce emissions. It's fantastic. There's also a huge opportunity with electric vehicles to do what we call vehicle to home. So you plug your car into your home, so you don't need to buy an expensive external battery, you just use your car. What a great opportunity. So we've got some of these now. We bought them, they are in our office, and we started looking at the systems to see how they worked. First thing is this battery had a Wi-Fi access point. I'm like, oh, I wonder. Tried the password, tried to crack it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. But now you're supposed to change it. So the installer's recommendation is you change it to the serial number of the battery, which is broadcast in the Wi-Fi access point. Whoa, the one place you don't do that. And that also meant we could use wireless searching tools like wiggle.net to actually geolocate the battery. So now we know where your vulnerable home is. So we went a bit further. That's our battery. It also connects, it has its own wireless access point you can connect to, but it also has an access client that connects to your home access point. It stores that router key on the battery, which means I can drive up to your home, connect to the Wi-Fi access point with your serial number, and now steal your home Wi-Fi network key. Now I can get onto your home network. It's a backdoor. There's another one they've done. They've also got an RJ45 port on the battery, and if your battery is installed next to your home router, the installers will plug it in, creating another backdoor onto your home network. This is crazy. We went a bit further. Once we were on there, we connected to it and discovered the telnet port. Unencrypted, not good. And we then found the Wi-Fi module, found the schematics, and found the commands, AT commands, Hayes AT modem command set from like 1960-something, and realized going through the instructions, you could use one AT command, ATWA key, to extract your home Wi-Fi network key. And I'm thinking, hang on, I've seen this before. This is déjà vu. This is Groundhog Day. I remember giving a talk in 2015 at the PCI community meeting about my connected tea kettle. So 9 years ago, 9 years later, we used exactly the same method to hack a tea kettle as we did your home power storage batteries. This is crazy. I mean, it's one thing that's funny, making me a cup of tea or making my kettle boil when I don't want it to, or stealing my Wi-Fi key. But taking control of my home power batteries is another completely different matter. I've now got the opportunity to release power to the grid, draw power from the grid, cause a power outage locally, cause a power outage on the grid too, potentially. So this is really serious. So what can we learn from this? Well, what I've seen over the last few years is that consumer devices have improved. The failures are less systemic. They tend to be fewer on the API side. But we're still seeing manufacturers, we're still seeing vendors rushing. But at least they're starting to think about security now. So the really obvious security flaws are starting to be addressed up front. We're also starting to see standards in place to help protect us all, which is great. But when we start to see products that we don't buy directly as consumers, that we don't install directly as consumers, not tea kettles that we put in our kitchen, but third-party products like solar panels, like batteries that we have a third party install, there's still a huge gap there that I think is going to cause problems in the future. Stuff we hadn't thought of. And I'm going to bring you a crazy example from the automotive industry. Now, most cars are connected. And they're connected through a TCU, or telematics unit, a telematics control unit, or TCU. And an auto manufacturer came to us and said, hang on a minute, we're selling our cars to our consumers, and they've got connectivity in them. Is the car driver a threat to us? And so we popped out the TCU. It's got a cell modem in it, and we did a breakout on the SIM, and we realized a series of vulnerabilities that were quite surprising. So the hacker now has the TCU. They would be able to connect to that cell modem, and you'd usually have the first layer of protection would be a private APN, so you'd use the point-to-point daemon to give you a wrapper of security. You'd then probably protect it with SSL, TLS, and that would then give access to the telematics client, so that's your sat-nav, that's your traffic data. That's now got access all the way through to the telematics platform. What we found was the telematics platform, we could compromise it over the air from the TCU, pulled the domain credentials from the telematics platform, and discovered it was the same set of credentials for the corporate domain. So from a car, we compromised the entire organization. Now, this is a really forward-thinking organization. They fixed that straight away. But it took a bit of thinking to work out that way into the organization. So what's my advice? Well, so many mistakes in cybersecurity are hard to fix just before you go to market. Don't wait. Get advice early on. The biggest possible mistake you could make is choose the wrong hardware, the wrong microcontrollers, because that's very, very difficult to fix later down the line. It's also not the only way in to your smart devices. It's not the only way in to your organization. We found organizations we could hack from their door access controllers to control their domain that way. Red teaming, finding our way through the organization back into the smart devices. So not just hacking the smart device, but hacking it from the organization. I would also say there's a great series of podcasts that the PCI Council do about IoT. I did genuinely Kickstarter a connected toaster, but sadly that project never made it to production, so we're safe from smart toasters for the moment. But a last thing I want to leave you with is I genuinely believe that security can be a market enabler. Various surveys were done as regulation was starting to evolve, consulting with consumer. And they said the first obstacle was, well, I don't really need it. And the second obstacle was like, well, is it safe and secure? So if we can reassure our customers that our products are going to be really safe and really secure, actually, we may yet sell more of them, so bring it on. Anyway, if you want to learn more, we've got a booth around the corner next to the American Express stand. Come and have a chat with us, learn loads more about what we do in smart devices and also red teaming more generally. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.